I think we can all say that was one of the craziest deadlines ever. But now that we've seen everybody play at least one game with their new team, let's grade them. We're going to kick it off here with the biggest trade, maybe in NBA history as far as superstar for superstar talent, mind you, in the middle of a season. But we did a whole video on this, so I'll breeze through this one. But Luka, with his new team, he played 30 or so minutes last night against the Jazz, and him and LeBron, it does work, right? We question how is it going to work with so many ball dominant players in that offense. But they're finding a way. Sometimes, LeBron's spotting up. Sometimes Luka's spotting up. But what I did recognize is that anytime Austin Reeves or Luka has the ball, LeBron's trying to set a screen or he's cutting back doors. So it's not going to be as stagnant of an offense that we all thought. But for the Lakers to go from all these all-time greats, the rich just get richer. You're bringing a 25-year-old superstar in Luka Doncic. I'm going to give them an A, maybe even A plus, right, for this trade. But it's just a perfect situation for them. For the Mavericks, they got Anthony Davis. Of course, he looked great in that first quarter against the Rockets. That team looked amazing. They came out firing on all cylinders. The problem, however, Anthony Davis went down with an injury. He's going to be out for some time, but I do want to say this. Let's stop the Anthony Davis injury slander, right? This is a guy that's missed barely any games the last 2 years. Of course, for his sake, he did get hurt in his first game with the Mavericks, but he'll be fine. He'll be back, and they'll be ready for the playoff run. I'm going to give them a B, though, man. Again, we went into depth about it. You don't trade generational players. You just don't do it. For the Jazz, I gave him a B plus. Why? Because, well, they didn't even need to be in this trade. And then they come away with a young guard and 2 second-round picks. I mean, you can't go wrong with that if you're the Jazz. I think we can comfortably say this was the second biggest trade of the last week. And this, of course, included De'Aaron Fox, Zach LaVine, and a ton of draft capital. But for the Spurs, you made your move. You went out there, you got the lead guard for the next 10 years for Victor Wembanyama. And that was De'Aaron Fox, or Swiper, as we like to call them. I give him an A, right? This is a team that you went out there, you got a young guard. I will say that there is a bit of an adjustment period going on right now where De'Aaron Fox has some nights where he's barely scoring 10 points, right? Or his assist numbers aren't there where you'd like to see him or where they have been in his career with the Sacramento Kings. But again, there's an adjustment period. I think they're going to figure it out here. And after the All-Star break, this is a team that I think can really climb the Western Conference rankings in pretty quickly. I gave him an A, though. Again, you got your young guard for the future. For the Bulls, you did trade away Zach LaVine. You didn't trade away Vucevic, even though I doubt anybody really would have wanted him. But Trey Jones, Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, and a 2025 first, which it was their own, they got it back. And basically, they were okay with the fact that we're going to get our own pick back and we're going to go after Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey, one of these top prospects in the upcoming draft. I gave him a B because I would like to see maybe another first round pick go to Chicago in this deal. Regardless, you got your pick back and maybe some young talent to build with going forward. They get a B. And for the Kings, I gave him a B plus because I originally was a B, right? Because I was like, where's the defense on this Sacramento Kings team? They already didn't really have it with Swiper, and then you actually get a worse defender in Zach LaVine. But this is a team that has found a way to work, and their mentality is we're just going to outscore you. So for the Kings, Zach LaVine, 3 firsts and 3 seconds. That's a crazy haul with an all-star level guard in Zach LaVine. I like it. I'm giving him a B plus, maybe even an A minus. The last big trade here, and then after this, we can kind of fly through the rest of them here. But the Miami Heat, they finally washed their hands with the Jimmy Butler situation, and they said, hey, let's go get some guys that are fitting Heat culture, and they're going to help us make this playoff stretch, which, by the way, they're a top 4, top 5 seed at the recording of this video. But Andrew Wiggins, he looked good in his debut with the Miami Heat. Slow-Mo Anderson, and a protected first-round pick. I gave him a B+. Right, it always sucks to get rid of a superstar player, and that's why I gave him a B+, because it limits your upside now. However, I think it's a great move for them going forward, and I think whether if they want to keep Wiggins or some of these other pieces or trade them, they're going to be able to get those superstars down the line, and the Heat are going to be back because it's freaking Miami, right? For the Warriors, I gave him a B+, right? I mean, I don't think that their ceiling was raised tremendously high, But I do want to say that this defense is back to being a Warriors defense. Last night, I think Draymond had 5 or 6 steals. Jimmy had 4 or 5. They combined for double-digit steals. They're just, again, aggressive, man. Damian Lillard had like 10 turnovers last night. Now, granted, no Giannis, so that made his life a lot harder. But for the Warriors, Jimmy Butler has been a better fit than I thought on paper, and honestly, I think that they can make a play in, maybe even a playoff push, but I can't see him getting out of the first round. They still get a B plus for helping out Stephen Curry. And then for the Pistons, you didn't really need to be here, but I gave him a B because, well, you brought in Josh Richardson. I like that pickup for the fit next to Cade Cunningham, especially after they lost Jaden Ivey. He's not the scorer that Jaden Ivey is, but he's the defender, maybe even better than what Jaden Ivey is. Of course, I'm saying Josh Richardson. So I gave him a B here just for getting involved. Kyle Kuzma, Patrick Baldwin, and Jericho Sims go to Milwaukee, and for the reasons that they needed depth and they needed scoring, I gave him a B plus, but it could have been higher. Kyle Kuzma didn't look great in his debut, and why are you going to trade away a franchise cornerstone in Chris Middleton? It just kind of broke my heart a little bit, right? You don't want to see players like that just get traded, especially when they don't request a trade. But for the Wizards, you got Chris Middleton, a nice vet for a lot of these young players. AJ Johnson, he needed a fresh start, even though he was a rookie, and a second round pick. So for the Wizards, at the bare minimum, you got a great mentor, a nice young building piece, right? With AJ Johnson, maybe you could turn him into something, and a draft pick. So for the Wizards, you got rid of Kuzma, and you got back, I'd say, a really good return package. And then for the Knicks, you got the DeLon Wright money. I'm just going to give him a C because that's the base rating. Now, the Pelicans made a big move. They traded Brandon Ingram away. Finally, this was a guy like he was in that Miles Turner conversation where it's like every year they're, in trade rumors. They're going to go here. They're going to get traded there. But the Pelicans finally actually made the move. They traded him away for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a 2026 first, and a second this year in the 2025 draft. I think it was a good return package. It just, again, it's always hard to think that you won the trade when you trade away an all-star level player for a non-all-star level group of players. And that's why I gave him a B, right? I want to see what they do with this draft capital because obviously Bruce Brown and Kelly O, they're going to be gone either this year or next year. I just want to see what do you do from here, right? Who do you bring in? What do you try and trade for to build around Zion and DeJounte Murray, who get healthy quick, right? DeJounte Murray sucks to see guys go down with Achilles injuries. But what are they going to do around Zion going forward? Obviously, the Brandon Ingram's thing didn't work, but what is the next thing for the Pelicans, right? For the Raptors, you got Brandon Ingram. I like the move. You needed a go-to guy, a guy that is an all-star level player, can average 20 to 25 next to Scotty Barnes. When he's ready to go, I love the fit for the Raptors going forward. They get an A minus, maybe even an A. Miami Heat picked up a prototypical Heat culture player in Davion Mitchell, a young guy that offensively has struggled, but defensively, he's the guy that you want to throw out there and just be a pester to some of these other guards around the league. I think the Heat, you get a B. Davion Mitchell's not the greatest player, right? But I think he is a typical Heat culture player, and even though it's not a big pickup on paper, you might even get a B plus for a pickup like this. And for the Raptors, you get a C. You got PJ Tucker. You're going to let him go here in just a couple weeks, maybe even again in the offseason. And you get a second round pick. So second round pick for Davion Mitchell isn't necessarily the best return package, but I understand why the Raptors did it is to get under that second apron. Now, I brought this trade onto the show because I thought it was actually a really good trade for both sides. But if you don't know, well, this trade got rescinded. First time I think I could say that since the Chris Paul trade. I could be missing some trades in that timeline. Again, a lot of years there. But this trade got rescinded because Mark Williams failed his physical, and now the Hornets are trying to tell the league, hey, investigate this. We don't really want Mark Williams anymore. And now I think it's going to be a situation where Mark Williams might just get cut and might just be a free agent because that bridge is already burned between the Hornets and Mark Williams. And for the Hornets, or for the Lakers, is that bridge burnt already with guys like Cam Reddish and Dalton Knecht? Knecht was on the bench. I think he's actually a really good piece to have going forward next to Luka Doncic. But again, it's just a crazy situation that happened here. I think a lot of these players are probably going to end up as free agents because the bridges were burned. Maybe not Dalton Knecht, but you guys get the picture. as far as I know, this trade has still went through for the Charlotte Hornets, and that is Yusuf Nurkic, their receiving, as well as a 2026 first round pick. I gave them an A. Sure, you got Yusuf Nurkic. Who cares? He's going to be gone in a couple months. But you get a 2026 first round pick just for Cody Martin, Micic, and a second. That's an absolute steal of a trade for the Charlotte Hornets. And for the Suns, man, it just, they were backed into a corner and they had to make a desperation trade. They had to get rid of Yusuf Nurkic. And to get the package that they did, it doesn't move me at all. For the Atlanta Hawks, to get Karis LeVert, George Niang in 3 seconds, that'd be a good trade for maybe money, right? But as a Cavaliers fan, I think this was one of the best trades at the deadline, and it was at the shot clock. It was at the buzzer. Of course, it happened about 20 minutes before the deadline happened, but the Cavaliers brought in DeAndre Hunter. Last night, he made his debut. He got in foul trouble early, but outside of that, he picked it up in the second half, ended with like 15 points. He is the perfect mold of player that we need in Cleveland, and he's not going to stop the Tatums and the Jaylen Browns of the world, right? But we just need a guy that is a better defender than what we had. I trust DeAndre Hunter in the playoffs, guarding these bigger names, than a guy like Max Strus, and we'll just put it like that. The Atlanta Hawks bring in Terrence Mann and Bones Highland, but this is the reason I had it on here. Because the Clippers get Bogdan Bogdanovic and 3 second round picks. I gave him an A-. You get a perfect six-man guy that can either facilitate or score the basketball off the bounce or with the ball. And for the Hawks, you got young pieces, I guess, for Bogdan Bogdanovic, which is why you get a B-, maybe even a C+. But for the Clippers, I love the trade for you. It is just a perfect fit for either the bench or if he needs to slide into the starting five. I think he can do that seamlessly. The Mavericks are still in the mix here as they picked up Caleb Martin and they shipped Quentin Grimes in a second round pick to Philly. I think it was a pretty even trade. I understand the motto and the reasoning behind both teams making this move. I would have liked to see the Sixers keep a Caleb Martin, right? I don't think you need another scorer when you got Tyrese Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George to carry that load, especially when it comes to playoffs and you get shortened rotations. But I understand it. He's a little bit of a cheaper player, and you also get a draft pick in the mix. But for the Mavericks, I think it is a good pickup. And again, according to Nico Harrison, you don't need offensive firepower. You need the defense to win championships. And they did exactly that in this trade. The last big name to be traded, and the big name might even be a stretch, but Jonas Valanciunas is a very solid big. Don't let that go over your heads. But I gave him a B- because he's going to Sacramento. He played a couple games so far, and he's looked solid in his limited minutes. But Sacramento, you get another big man. It doesn't help your defense at all, but it's a lot more talented. He's a more talented bench player than what you had before this trade because you traded away Sissoko in 3 second round picks. You can't go wrong. And for Washington, you get draft capital for a veteran that was on a decently big contract. I think it's a win-win for both sides. But that was it, man. Episode 252. I do want your guys' thoughts. Let me know down in the comments whether if you're a fan of one of these teams or, hey, you just want to talk about one of the trades. Let me know your initial thoughts on how some of these guys have looked in their debuts with their new teams down in the comments section. And I'll get back to you as quick as I can because I always get back to you guys down there in the comments section. But that is episode 252 on Thursday. We got some fun stuff coming up for you as far as the NFL world. But until then, man, stay happy, stay healthy, and it was a crazy deadline.